Hello, everybody. So, welcome back to class. Hope everyone had a good long weekend. So today's class, I want to just move on with another lecture. We're going to be looking now at the select statement in SQL. And I've also got the next assignment. Assignment number 2 is posted. And I just want to say congrats to everyone for getting done the first assignment. It's always good to get off to a good start. Getting that first assignment done is a really good first step. You guys probably feel pretty good about getting that work done. And I feel good because I feel like we're now on track with the learning and we're ready to proceed. So I've got the next assignment posted, and we can talk just really quickly about it. So I'm on D2L here, and if I go to assignments, we've got assignment 2. So I'll just download this. Okay, so with assignment 2, the first part 1 is just using insert statements. So basically we have a bunch of tables from the previous assignment, and you're going to, there's a Excel spreadsheet, and you're going to go and insert into those tables all of the data in this spreadsheet. So this is a very, very simple first step. It does require you to make sure that you have fixed any issues with the tables you created previously. After that, then we get into some queries. So basically this is just using select statements. This will be stuff that we're going to look at today. And you're probably fairly familiar with the select statement. So I think there's 8 queries here where basically it's saying grab this information from this table and display these columns. Nothing really too difficult with this. There will be some formatting and also some selection that we'll have to do inside the where clause of our select statement. But that's what we're going to be learning this week in the lectures. You'll also notice that it'll refer to some of these queries. We're going to use the EX user or the AP user or the OM user, etc. And all that means is those are the users that we created in our database using the scripts that were provided previously. So when I look at my SQL developer, if I go to my users at the bottom, we have the 3 users, AP, EX, and OM. So when it says use the AP user, that means we're going to use the tables from that user. Okay, and what else here? The last thing, it talks a little bit about formatting. And basically the important thing here is that when you submit your assignment, you submit both the queries as well as the output. I will not be marking any assignments that don't include both. I'll basically just pass it back to you and say, please resubmit with both the queries and the output. And the reason being is very simple. If you pass me something and it doesn't have the output, then I don't know that it actually works or runs. And that's extremely time consuming to go in and try to figure out what I'm working with. So it's much better if I have both the queries and the output. I can quickly match them up. And if I do want to run them, I have the confidence that I can see what you did. I can see all your commands and I know that it works. So if I run into any issues marking it, it's a lot better for me. So make sure you try to follow these instructions and at least give me some output that comes with all the queries. Okay, so let's move on. So under lectures, I posted another set of notes, lecture 5, select statements. And I'm just going to start though by looking at something back from lecture 1. So when we started with lecture 1, this just went through an introduction to SQL, etc., etc. But one of the things that it did have, I think midway through the notes, it talked about setting up SQL Developer, SQL Plus. We went through all that in a previous video. But it did talk about select statements. So that's kind of where we're gonna work with today is select statements. And the basic syntax is shown right here, okay? And we have it can be a very simple syntax where we can just say select, we can specify some columns, and then we say from a table name, and that can be it, okay? So we could go select star from orders, semicolon. We can run that, and that's going to give me all the columns from the orders table, and that's it. Now, of course, that's the most simple example. We can do much more complex examples should we desire to. And the more complex example would be we can put in an optional where clause. And we're going to look at that today specifically. Where clause just allows me to filter the results. So I could say select star from orders where customer ID equals 10. So that's only going to grab the orders from the customer ID with 10. And maybe they have 3 orders in that table, and that's the results I'm going to get. So we're going to look at the where clause. It's a very powerful optional clause that we can add to our select statement that can do powerful filtering. We're not going to look at group by today. We're not going to look at having. We are going to look at order by. So order by is very simple as well. Basically, we can just say we want to order this. Give it some sort of sorting. So for example, I could say select star from customers, order by last name. So now, instead of the customers all just coming in a random sort of order, now they're going to be ordered by last name. And that's going to be an alphabetical most likely because the last name is going to be text. So it's going to be in ascending order. So basically, it'll start with A, B, okay, alphabetically ordered. And we'll look at how that works. We're also going to look at doing a sort within a sort. So I can order by last name, and I can also, within that last name, I can order by first name. So now, let's say we had a bunch of people that had the last name Allen, okay? So Allen is going to be near the top of my results because it's alphabetical and it's A. But then if we have, say we have 5 people that have the last name Allen, but all have different first names, they're going to be sorted within the last name sort. So we might have Allen, we might have Beth Allen would be first, then we might have Kathy Allen, Jennifer Allen, Steve Allen, okay? And that's basically a sort within a sort. We can sort by multiple columns. So we'll look at that as well. And that's pretty much what we're gonna do today. So once again, if we're looking here, these are all the lecture notes we have. I'm gonna look now at lecture 5, select statements, and we can run through a few examples with that. So let's take a look here. I have this open. And this is the notes. Now, these notes, you have to kind of just go through them. I think the best part about doing these notes is we can do the examples that come with them. They do kind of go all over the place a little bit. Like this one here is starting off with logical operators. I mean, not sure why it does that, but it doesn't really matter. The examples are the key to understanding this stuff. So logical operators, this is something we can include in the where clause. And you can think about this as like an if statement. Okay, we write if statements all the time when we're doing Python or JavaScript or Java, whatever you guys program in, okay? And we can include these logical statements and ors in our where clauses, okay? So we have a truth table here. This is obviously review. So if you have, for an and statement, both your statements or all, if you have more than 2, they all have to evaluate to true for that statement to be true. Otherwise, if one of them is false, the entire statement is false. Where with or, if one of them is true, the whole thing evaluates to true, okay? Now, the examples we're gonna do today, these come from the Bookstore database. And that is a special database script that I've posted previously. It's right here under Database Scripts Bookstore. So if you download that, and then you open it up in your SQL developer, like I have here, I've placed my system username and then my password that I selected when I set up my database. I also have the alter session to set the correct date format. And that's from a previous video where the date format didn't work. So basically, I've got that set up. It goes through, it creates a bunch of tables, and then it places data inside those tables. And the examples in these notes happen to follow along with this database. And the tables will be created in the regular user, not in one of the AP or the custom users. It's basically just in the base of the database. So we have these different tables here. So we have books, book author, customers, orders, and we'll be referring to these as we go along. Okay, so so what we're going to look at here, this is an example. We have select title, publish ID, category from books, where pub ID equals 3 and category equals computer. Okay, so let's just do these examples as we go. So I'm going to go into my database. I'm going to create a new database file. Okay, untitled 12, that's fine. So let's try this out. I'm going to go select title, pub ID, category from, and mine is B underscore books, where pub ID equals 3 and category equals, oops, computer. Okay, let's try running that. Okay, and there I go. So what we notice, we've used a where statement to filter our results. Now, just for comparison, let's just remove that and let's just run the query without the where statement. You guys can probably guess what we're gonna get. We're gonna get a lot of records. So this corresponds to every record in the books table. All right, so I'll put that back in. Let's run it again. Oops. Okay, there we go. So essentially we've done our logic statement. We're saying where the publish ID is 3 and the category is computer. So both of those conditions have to be true. If you have one that has a publish ID of 3, but the category is cooking, well, you're not gonna see that result. Very, very simple example, that we're seeing. Now we can do the same thing with an or logical operator instead. So I'm gonna go ahead and modify this instead of and. Now I'm just gonna go with the or statement. Okay, let's run this. Okay, and in this case, we get one extra result. We notice we have a title here, e-business, the easy way. And the publish ID is 2, and the category is computer. So in this case, only one of these conditions has to hold true for us to get that record included, that row included in our results. Okay. So one thing that comes into play whenever we do a complex statement is going to be some sort of order of operations. We've certainly seen this when you guys program Python or JavaScript. A simple example is where multiplication division gets done before we do addition subtraction, okay? As well as when we place things in brackets or parentheses, that's going to get done before any other operations as well. We also have a not logical operator, and that's going to get done usually before any other operations as well. So in this case with a where clause, arithmetic operations are solved first. So if we have an operation that is something like where cost is greater than 15 times discount, okay? The times discount, that would count as an arithmetic operator. So that gets solved immediately. Then the comparison operator, the greater than or equal to, that's then going to get solved next, where we have cost and then we have a numerical value. That operator would then evaluate both of those, and that's either going to be true or false. Then if we had a not logical operator, that would get done next. Then if we have an and, that would come next, and then or. So there's a logical order here, and that's important when we write our statements, that we know we can verify this is how these statements are going to execute, and it's going to be consistent. Okay, so let's look at some examples here where we're going to use some more, add a few more logical operators, and we'll see what the order of operations is. So this one is produce a query that finds books that cost more than $15 and is either published by publisher 4 or is in the family life category. Okay, so we have three basically logical statements here. We have the first one is going to be it's going to cost more than $15. So then, and then it's an and statement, and is either published by publisher for or is in the family life category. So we have an and we have an or included here. Okay, so this is the statement that they're starting out with. And let's try this example. So you can see here it goes select star from books where category equals family life, or the publisher ID equals 4 and the cost is greater than 15. So I'm gonna enter this one into here. So we'll go select star from books where category equals family life, or pub ID equals 4 and cost is greater than 15. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, so it's B underscore books. Okay. All right, got a slight error here. So select star from B underscore books where category equals or pub ID equals 4 and cost is greater than 15. Okay, that looks good. Let's take a quick look here at my B books table. So we've got pub ID, we have cost. Okay, category spelled wrong. Okay. Category. All right, let's try that. Okay, so there we go. So we've done our statement here. We have the category is family life or the publisher ID is 4 and the cost is 15. Now, this is a case where we have some order. We have two operations. We have an or and an and we need to verify, is our logic correct? So when I look back here, let's read what it actually wants here. We want a query that finds books that cost more than $15 and is either published by publisher for or is in the family life category. So it has to cost more than 15 bucks, and it has to be or in either publisher for or the family life category. So when I look here, I notice something right away. The Revenge of Mickey, it only costs $14.20. So something is not quite right. And the books either have to be published by publisher for. So if I look here, I have some that are published by publisher for, or they have to be in the family life category. So that looks correct. If I look at the first one, it has a publisher ID of 4. The next one has a category of family life. The next one has a category of family life. The other one has a publisher ID of 4, and the last one has a publisher ID of 4. So that's fine, but there's something wrong with my query because the cost for this one is only $14.20. So basically, let's think about now our order of operations. So when I look back, the order of operations, the first operator that I have that's going to be evaluated is the and one. So when I look at my statement, I have a statement here, publisher ID equals 4, and the cost is greater than 15. So that's going to be evaluated first. Then, after that's evaluated, then it's going to take the category of family life, and it's going to evaluate the or operation. And that's going to result in getting a book here that has a cost of less than $15. Because even though the publisher ID is 4 and cost is greater than 15, even though that returns false, when I do the or category is family life, then that ends up returning true and that gets added to my result. So in this case, this would actually be a mistake. This query does not fit what I'm trying to get. And the correct way to do this would be to use parentheses to override the order of operations. So the correct fix here would be to say where category equals family life or publisher ID equals 4 and the cost is greater than 15. So now when I run this, okay, now these are the correct results that I want for the query. That basically the book has to cost more than $15 and it has to either be published by publisher up 4 or it has to be in the family life category. Now, one thing to mention, doing these parentheses is always a good idea. And whenever I'm writing a complex logic statement that involves order of operations, I always put in parentheses, even if I don't need to. Even if I know that this statement is going to be executed first, I always like to put in the parentheses because that basically makes it easier to read and it's easier to spot any mistakes I make. Also, my code becomes more portable because if I port it to another platform that has a different order of operations, because I've used parentheses, that makes the code run the same. All right. Okay, so the notes also have this example where they put in the parentheses and then you can see the results that I just demonstrated. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So one of the things that we've looked at in previous classes, we definitely looked at the in statement. So you can have, well, we looked at this when we did check constraints. So you could have a check constraint where you're only allowing certain values to be included as data in a table. This can also be done though in a where statement. Same thing with the between. That can be used in check constraints, I believe. We also use these statements in our where statements, and it makes it easier to write our logic, okay? I can just basically say where publisher ID is between 1 and 3, and that's a short form because otherwise I'd have to do a logic statement where I would have to say the publisher ID is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 3. So that's more typing, easier for me to make mistakes, harder to read, much better to go where publisher ID is between 1 and 3. Now, in addition, we can say where code in A, B, or E. That just means that code equals A, or code equals B, or code equals E. Now, we can rewrite these, though, as equivalents using and or operators, these 4 examples here. So the book basically goes through and it's going to show us how to do each of these. But we might as well just do examples of this before looking at the answers. So if I'm looking at my books table, do I have a code? I don't. I need to find a table that has a code. Publisher? No. Okay, well, let's just come up with an example. I'm not going to do I won't do all 4 of these. Let's go back to the books table. So with books table, we have a publisher ID. So let's look at the data we have for this. So publisher ID, okay, so we have a bunch of publisher IDs. You can see here we have values for 1 all the way up to 5. So I'm going to do a statement. I'm going to use the pub ID in, and then I'm going to specify several values. So let's go back to our query here. I'm going to say select star from B underscore books where pub ID in, and I'm going to say 1, 3, 5, okay? So I want the publisher ID to be one of those 3 values. Let's run this. Okay, and there we go. And we can verify that we were getting the right publisher IDs, 1, 3, 3. Those are all the ones that we want, okay? So basically this exercise is asking us, well, how could we do this a different way? So if I want, I could rewrite this. I'll just copy this here. And you can probably see why this wouldn't be necessarily the best way to do it, but it's certainly a valid, correct way. So we could say where publisher ID equals 1, or pub ID equals 3, or pub ID equals 5. And I'll run this and I will get the same results. There we go, okay? So let's look at the next one here. So let's do the not in example. So where publisher ID not in A, B, or and E. So I'll do this one first. So let's modify. We'll modify this statement here. So not in. So in other words, we should get anything that's not a publisher ID of 1, 3, and 5. So let's run it. And there we go. We can see that we're looking at publisher IDs of 4 and 2. Now, another example then, how would we rewrite this? So basically we're going to say where publisher ID is not equal to, so this is apparently that's the not equal syntax in SQL. So where publisher ID is not in 1 and publisher ID is not 3 and publisher ID is not 5. Okay, and I'll run this and I'm going to get the same 6 results. There we go. Okay, so basically these are just logic exercises. Whenever you have a statement, and this comes back to, I want you guys to think about if statements when you guys are writing Python code or JavaScript, okay? And you can always take a statement and you can rephrase it as a negative as well. So you can change the logic from this condition to not equals and then just basically reverse the condition. Usually it's better to say we're code in one of these, but there are situations where it can be more effective to say not in, okay? And it's important to pick the one that's simpler because someone else is gonna have to read your code and work on it. So that's what you always wanna go with. Now let's look at, I'm not gonna do these at the between examples, but we can take a quick look at them because they're in the notes as we go through here. So that's the answer key for the first two. And then we can see here, if I did a where publisher ID is between 1 and 3, I could also say where publisher ID is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 3. Now remember, with our order of operations, the arithmetic conditions are evaluated first. So both of these pub IDs, they're going to be evaluated, and then the AND condition, the operator, is going to be evaluated. Okay. So those are just 2 more examples. Now, there's another statement here in the notes I don't completely agree with. When using an AND clause, you should choose the expression which will more than likely give a false value to be the first one tested. When using an OR clause, you should choose the expression which will more likely give a true value to be the first one tested. That's true. You definitely, if you had the option, that would be something you would want to do. But it's not necessarily going to be something you're going to know which one is going to give you the short circuit evaluation. So I wouldn't worry too much about what's said here. The other question is if you put effort into, this is called short circuit evaluation, where if you can get the first statement in an AND clause to return false, the second one will never be evaluated. So it's potentially an optimization, but you don't actually know if this optimization is going to be that effective. So I wouldn't worry too much about this, but if you do have the choice, you would prefer, if it's an OR clause, have the statement that's going to evaluate most likely to be true, run that first. And if it's an AND clause, have the one that's going to return false potentially to evaluate first. That way you skip further processing down the line. Okay. All right, moving on, we're looking at null values. So when we look at our tables, we often get null values. So if I'm looking at my orders table, I can see here, do I have, yeah. Look at shipping cost. So some of these have null values, all right? And we look at ship date, there's null values. Null value means absence of data. There's nothing entered for that. It doesn't mean a value of 0. It doesn't mean a value of an empty string. It means no value there at all, okay? And that's an important distinction. People sometimes make the mistake of thinking that null represents 0 or null represents an empty string. And you have to be fairly careful of that. Null should represent null. You shouldn't be trying to make assumptions about what a null value means or using your code to give it a special value. And that's something that is true across many different programming languages, not just when we're working with SQL. All right. Oops. Okay, so these go in here, and this basically tries to emphasize that. Null is not the same as a blank space. It's not the same as 0. And you will see programmers make these type of mistakes where they'll use null and they'll try to give it special meaning. And what that ends up leading to errors down the road when someone else has to come in and work on their code. And there's all these assumptions about the null value that are being made that just aren't really based on any reality. And you can easily make mistakes. So Oracle uses the keyword null to signify a null value, meaning there's nothing there. When we do comparisons, we need to use a special operator, is null or is not null. We don't go equals. We don't use the equals or the not equals operator when we do null comparisons. And we're going to see that in a minute. Okay, so we're going to see that right now. So here's an example. Select a couple columns from orders where the ship date is null. So let me do this example. Go to our, okay. So select order number, oops. Ship date from orders where ship date is null. Okay, so let's run this. And when we look back at our orders, we notice the ship date is right here and there's several null values there. Okay, so it's B underscore orders. There we go. Let's try that again. Okay, and there we go. We're getting an order number and a ship date that's null, all right? And that matches what we're seeing in our notes. I'll bring the notes back over here and we can see that that's the exact same results. So basically just doing a null comparison. It's grabbing all of the rows and displaying them when there's a null value in the ship date. Now we can also do the is not null. And so this is a situation we want to see all rows that have a valid entry for the ship date. So I just change this to is not null. Okay, and I'll run this again. And there we go. Now we're seeing the valid ship dates included. Okay, so really these are really simple examples. Now here's the mistake that you can often make, where you put in an equality operator or a not equals operator and you try to do this null comparison. This will not work. So I will go ahead and do this now. So I'm going to say where ship date equals null. And there we go, we get no results. So that's pretty bad because we're not actually seeing an error there. You would kind of hope you would get some sort of logic error, but that's not the case. You just get no results. So look out for that. All right, so we're moving on. We're going to now look at the order by clause, and this is going to be the last, I believe, topic for this lecture. So when we look at our select statement once again, we can basically do a select, we specify some columns, and then we specify a from. Now, optionally, we can specify a where clause, where we basically filter the results that we get. So we've done some examples using that now. Now, the other optional one we're going to look at is order by. We can order our results by a column, or we can order it by several columns if we want, but we're going to start off with just one column. Now, when we sort, there is going to be an order applied to the sort, and by default, it's going to be ascending order. So alphabetically, that's going to start with A, okay, and increase. For numerical values, it's going to start at 1 and increase. So when sorting, the values will be listed in this order. We have numeric values will come first, then we'll have character values, then we'll have null values. And that is a default of ascending. Now, if we want, we can use a descending order as well. We just need to use the DESC keyword that specifies that. Okay, so we've got a query here, displays everything, all columns from publishers, ordered by the name column. So let's do this one. I'll just fire this into my developer. So I go select star from B underscore publisher, order by name. Okay, so we can see our name. We have name here, and the first one is American Publishing. And you can easily see that that is in alphabetical order. Now, of course, if I don't include the order by, now we're just going to get the results as they're stored in the table, and we can see that there is no order applied there. That's not in alphabetical order. Okay, now that is in ascending order. Let's do an example. We'll just change this to be in descending order. So order by name, and I can put in the DESC keyword. So now instead of it being it's now in reverse alphabetical order, we just flip the order. Okay. Now there is a note here. This is in the notes. It talks about the testing table to illustrate null values. So essentially what they're doing is they're using this testing table to order by this T value, and they've given us a bunch of different pieces of data. So some of the pieces of data start with a number, one of them starts with an empty space, one of them starts with a percent sign, other ones start with alphabetical characters, and one of them is null. So the whole idea here is this is giving us a clear example of how the order of operations works. So let's run this query. Let's first look at the testing table. So this is it right here, B testing. And you can see here that we have this column T value. And that's the one, and there's a description, and this tells us what the data starts with. So I'm now going to run this query. And I'm gonna go select star from testing. That's B underscore testing, B underscore testing, order by T value. Okay, there we go. And I'm gonna run this. Okay. So this just gives us more, a bit more information about the order of operations. We can clearly see not order of operations, but what the sort order. So the first one, the value that starts with a blank character, that comes first. After that, we have the special character. Then we have the value that starts with a number. So we can see here, this one starts with a number. Then we have an uppercase B, we have an uppercase C, we have a lowercase b, and we have a null value. Okay, now we can compare that to the notes really quickly. If I move back up in the notes, we see this is the sort order in the notes. So numeric values first, then character values, then null values. So essentially, they're not giving us the full picture with this note. There's a little bit more detail here that, for example, a blank space would come first, then a special character. Then for character values, they're going to be sorted with uppercase first, then sorted by lowercase starting characters first. Then we're going to have numeric characters and then null values, okay? So using this example, this testing table, we can get a little bit of a clearer picture about how the sorting works. Okay, we already did this example. We used the DESC keyword to reverse the sort order. Now, there is a keyword ASC, which you can use, and that is basically specifying the ascending order, which is the default. That's why I left it out, but I could have said order by name ASC, and then that would have worked the same as if I omitted that. However, doing the ASC probably, some people would argue that's a good idea because it makes your code more readable. Okay. Okay, so moving on, let's just quickly look at this example here. So this one is a little bit different. You might take a quick look at this. You might see something that we haven't really seen yet, and that is that it's using a column alias. So they're saying select publisher ID name, and then they have double quotes, publisher name, phone, from publisher, order by, quotes, publisher name. The whole idea here is they're using a column alias. So when we look at the results, we're getting, instead of it saying name, it says publisher name. And the results are sorted by that. And that's called a column alias, okay? So that's all that is, and you can refer to that column, and that column will then be displayed in the header above the values in the column. All right, so we know that null values are listed last when we're doing a sort. So in this case, they've sorted by referred, and the null value is last. However, you do have the option of switching that order around, and you can say, if, for example, if you want the null values to appear first, you can basically put in the command nulls first, and that's what they've done here. They've selected some columns from customers, and they're ordering by the referred column, which happens to have a null value, and now they're saying nulls first. And if you add that to your sort, then those values will come to the top. And you can compare that where if that's omitted, the nulls are at the bottom. Okay, now if you are using a descending order, you would then say nulls last because nulls first would be the default. Okay, so pretty simple. You guys can go through and do these examples or read through these. I don't think I need to spend time typing this in. It's a very simple example, and you can rearrange the order of the nulls basically using this nulls first or nulls last command. Okay, so last main topic is secondary sort. Now I talked about that earlier when we were just kind of doing a brief review of ordering our statements here. This was from the lecture 1 notes, and we talked about the basic syntax. So what we've been doing right now, we've been doing the order by, is we've been doing what's called a primary sort. So we've taken one column and we've sorted the values using that one column. However, in many cases, you would want to do a secondary sort as well. Think about a phone book, okay? In a phone book, you sort by last name as your primary sort, but you also then do a first name or initial, and you do a secondary sort on that. So all of the names that, say, for example, have the last name Allen would be grouped together, but then they're sorted by their first name as well, in addition to the primary sort. And the very simple example here is a phone book sort would be order by last name. That's your primary sort. You put a comma, and then you say first name, and that is your secondary sort. So let's look at this example here. So we're going to grab all of the people from the customers table, and we're going to sort the city they live in. But we're going to do a primary sort of the state, and we're going to do a secondary sort of the city. So let's go, and I will set this up in developer. So I'm going to say select last name, first name, state, city, from B, customers, and I'm going to go order by, and I'm going to go state. Actually, let's not do, yeah, okay, we'll go for it. Order by state, and we're going to order it in descending order, and then we'll order by city. So let's run this. Okay. So we can see here, for example, we have a state of WY, so that's Wyoming, and we have 2 cities here, and the cities are then going to be specified in alphabetical order. Now, the states are applied in a descending order. Now we have, let's see here, we have New Jersey, so we have 2 entries from New Jersey, and they are ordered alphabetically. So Morristown comes before Trenton alphabetically. So that sort is applied as a secondary sort. Okay. Now, a couple things. These are just some notes that come up here. You don't have to have the column used in the order by clause. So for example, I don't have to, even though in this case, I am ordering by state and city, I don't actually have to include those. Of course, you probably want to. I don't know why you wouldn't want to, but you don't have to. It still works. The query will still work. In other words, I could take this query and I'm ordering by state and city, but I could remove city. I don't need that there. The query is still going to work. Okay, I still get a set of valid results. However, if I do use a keyword called distinct, and basically that is going to only return distinct results based on the columns that I'm using, then I have to include those columns in my select statement. That's something we'll come to when we cover some more stuff related to this select statement. So that's just a special case. Okay, the last thing mentioned in these notes is we can also use the position number of a column within the table in the order by clause. So in other words, instead of sorting by and then giving a column name, we can substitute in a number, which is the order that the column comes within our select statement. So they're giving a few examples here. So this would be the way we've been doing it so far: order by state, descending city. But you could also say order by 3, descending 4. And when we look here, 3 corresponds to state and 4 corresponds to city. Now, I don't know why you would want to do that, because it makes it more confusing, less readable. But you need to be aware of it, because someone else might do it, and then you see this and you have to work with it. So you should be able to recognize, okay, they're referring to the order of the column within the query. All right, so I'm going to wrap things up. So just to review, we've gone through the lecture notes here. We've looked at select statements. We've looked at ordering and logic operators using select statements. And I've also posted the second assignment. Now, the due date for the second assignment is next Friday. So you guys have a little over a week. So I suggest you get started on that. The first part of it, the insert statements, you guys can definitely crank out and get that done immediately. And then we'll start working, you can start working on the select statements that come with that assignment. All right, have a great day. I'll talk to you guys later.